I'm really excited to be the curator of Tatyana's second exhibition between the CAAM and Art Practice team. Tatyana's first exhibition is at CAAM in the atrium, and it's called Speaking to Falling Seeds. It will be reopened. It's going to be really exciting to see the work up. It's around like 30 feet tall, portraits, repasted, very beautiful and incredible, and connected to this exhibition here today, which is called Falling on Soft Ground. We're going to talk for a little bit, but also I really want to have everyone who's here, if you have a question, if you have a comment, or you want to kind of offer to the conversation, to think about that throughout this process, because it's certainly one, I know Tatyana will be here throughout the run of this exhibition, and so it is a really intimate moment to actually ask her a question or us a question while she's here with you, because she's actually based in Brooklyn, and I want everyone to take advantage of the opportunity to have an artist in front of you whose work is also here, and who obviously you're interested in because you're here today. So my first question is, can you kind of walk us through conceptually the beginnings of this exhibition? In part because I know the conversation was long before we landed here at Art and Practice, but also there's so much of your work that hasn't really been seen, certainly in California, to this degree. So yeah, what were you thinking of? Where did you want to go? How does CAAM fit into it? And walk us to this space, getting us here today.
Yeah, so this project this exhibition really started over a year ago. I was here last spring, March and April of 2023, for a month. And during that time, I spoke with and engaged with several different Black women and Black femme folks across the city. And that is a part of my practice, just engagement with people, conversations, interviewing folks. It's something that's been crucial in my work for over 10 years. I'm interested in how people live their lives and how their lives are affected by identity, and how that affects how they are able to move throughout particular environments. So when I was here in LA, LA is very particular in its physical landscape, its physical makeup. And so I was wondering, where are these Black women feeling themselves, feeling comfortable, feeling free, in which sites and locations. So that was really the start of it. And from those conversations, from the photographs that I took of folks, I then started to create the work. I started to create the work at CAAM first. And that was based on portraiture. If anybody saw the show, it's these really big portraits of women that start off with really small drawings. Some of those drawings are on the walls here. And then I created these big wheat paints. And then from there, I started to conceptualize this show. And so in this show, what I wanted to do was create different environments, 3 different environments: the street, the home place, and the natural world, because those are the environments that I mostly talked about with women in our conversations. A lot of my work is, again, thinking about environment, but I also placed a lot of work out into the public place. So what I wanted to do with this show was I'm going to the girls. And so what I wanted to do with this show was really to bring the outdoors inside. So how are people experiencing the street? The window room over here is how people are experiencing the street. How do people experience the home place? This room right here is me creating the home environment. And then how are people experiencing the natural world? And the outside is me sort of creating an installation of the natural world. So to answer your question, it really sort of began to conceptualize last spring through my conversations with Black women here in LA about different environments and how they feel in those environments.
That's wonderful. And can you kind of tell us more about those conversations and how the site specificity of Los Angeles, as you were hearing people's responses and where you were talking to them, came through for you in terms of what ultimately we're sitting in today? Sort of how, maybe not the super details that are specific to a particular person that are intimate, but some insight around your social practice, because it is really impactful of what you ultimately captured in the photography, then in the drawings, and then also oil paintings and the installation itself.
Yeah, so when I was meeting with women last spring, I asked them, let's meet somewhere where you feel comfortable, I'll come to you. And so a lot of those conversations happen in parks. People felt comfortable outside, outdoors. Some of them happened in Black-owned spaces, which I thought was really beautiful. Reparations Club was one of those places. They happened in these different locations where, you know, these women felt comfortable. And for me, that was important because I wanted to have a conversation that didn't specifically talk about violence and trauma and harassment and all of the things that we experience, but I also wanted to talk about where do you feel good, like how do you feel good? And because I don't live in LA and I don't know LA that well, it was also an opportunity for me to sort of travel around the city and learn about the city through the lives of these people. And you know, California just has this beautiful natural world, right? You guys have, you know, hiking and beaches and parks and all of that stuff. And so it wasn't a surprise to me that that was one of the places that people felt good and comfortable. But also things like race and gender and presentation and all of the different overlapping identities that people hold did come into play, did come into conversation. Even in the natural world, you might still be experiencing racism in some way. In the street, how are you experiencing your gender on the street? Even in the home place, which I think that this gallery room talks about, doesn't always feel safe or comfortable with someone because of different things, because of different oppressions or different traumas that happen to us. So it was fascinating to me. It was a learning process for me. And I tried to take all of the things that I learned and I heard and infuse them into the work somehow. And that's really what I do just across the board when it comes to my work. I really considered the conversations last spring kind of like research in a way, whereas a lot of times when I go into conversations with people, I know exactly what I'm trying to get from them. I have a very pointed question, but these conversations were really sort of like open-ended. I have like one prompt question, but then I just kind of let it all just sort of unfold how it unfolded and began to conceptualize from there.
That's great, and I think again we talked about how this main gallery kind of shows the different ways in which you considered the questions at hand and also your own broader ideas around social practice and what it looks like ultimately here. And so, you know, in this gallery we have a lot of you that shows up, your handwriting and self-portraiture, and then we also have obviously, you know, images, the drawings you've done of the women you were interviewing previously, and then we have kind of found photography. So I'm interested in how you thought about that relationship between these objects, and even the material that's being presented in this gallery. We have wheat paste, we have vinyl, we have oil painting, and we have graphic drawing. So I want to, can you kind of talk about that intersection and the relationship that you wanted to generate between yourself and really putting yourself back into the work in this way?
Yeah, putting myself into this work was really important for me, for this exhibition in particular, because what I have found in my interviews with people is that it is as much an opportunity for me to be open and honest and candid with another human being as it is for the people that I'm interviewing. And because I'm an artist, I feel like I'm an artist 24/7, and so it just blends into like my personality and who I am as a person. And so this show was kind of like breaking the fourth wall in a way, right? Like I feel like artists, we make the work, we put it on the wall, and then we step back from it. We don't really offer people insight into us, how it affects us, what we're making it, how we're making it, what we're thinking about. And so like this wheat paste piece on the wall over here, the handwriting, is an example of that. It's a journal entry of mine, it's my handwriting. And I'm talking about just all the ideas that I'm thinking about in the show. Thinking about home place being this site of safety, but is it really a site of safety? Like, what if it isn't safe because it wasn't safe for these particular people who were killed in their homes, or is it a site of safety when you are battling yourself inside your home? So I wanted people to have access to my thinking and my personal relationship to the work as well. I'm also a Black film person in the same way that everyone else in this show is, and so how do I relate to these themes of safety and comfort? And so yes, and also the material. I wanted the show to really be a large, sort of expansive expression of the work that I do. I do think that people recognize my work as the black and white lead page drawings. And that is like a very crucial part of my practice. But I'm also a painter. I'm also thinking about image in these larger ways, in the ways that I'm trying to layer image on top of image, layering texture, using text, using scale with the small drawings versus the really big finals. I think really largely about image, and I wanted this show to be an opportunity to really show that, show the range of my practice, of the media that I work in, and to just really have a thorough, expansive show that people can really spend time in, examine, find the little pieces, and just really explore.
So can you walk us through the piece that's directly in front of us? It's right behind me. The painting is Gwen and her grandbaby. It's on top of a blown up vinyl image, and then within the painting is the vinyl, right? As a photograph again, but painted. So can you talk to us just about like the figures that we're seeing, this idea around layering and technique, and the kind of metascapes that you're creating, going back and forth with scale?
I love this wall. The photograph, the black and white vinyl photograph, is a large-scale reprint of the actual photo that is on the painting. So I glued the actual photograph on top of the painting. That photograph is a photograph that I found inside of a photo album that I found at a thrift store in Houston, Texas, years ago. And all of the little photos, the vinyl of the little girl in front of the tree, the photographs that are on the wall, they're all from that photo album. I've used these photos in my work since buying that album, over 8 years or so ago, because I find it fascinating and interesting that I do not know these women personally, but I recognize them in a way. I recognize their homes, I recognize their outfits, I recognize their hair, I recognize, the culture of it. Also, I bought it in Houston, Texas, and I'm from Oklahoma. So, just regionally, I just sort of recognize these women, and I find that interesting. I find it interesting that you can have a photo or an image of a black woman on a wall, and you don't know her personally, but you still recognize her. And so that's why I use these photographs in my work. And then this wall in particular, the painting is called Gwen and Her Grandbaby, and that is from a photograph of a family friend. I know Gwen, that is her granddaughter. I thought it was a beautiful image of them, and so I painted it, and again, just sort of relating it to this image, this photograph of these two women sitting on the couch. I'm using color in it. The colors in the photograph are sort of matching with the colors in the painting. I loved having this really red, black, and green palette sitting on top of this black and white image. So that's sort of how I play with that and put that wall together.
Yeah, I think it speaks so directly to this idea again of layering different kind of genres and mediums and tools to kind of get at the same question. Part of that has been that bell hooks and Zoriel Hurston have come up in lots of our conversations, and they're also kind of present here in the gallery. Can you talk about kind of theorist or Black feminist praxis, how that actually guides the work, and why you felt the need, right, to have Belle represented on a wall to herself, and Zora as well as kind of place for walking in and out of this gallery space?
Yeah, Bell Hooks is just sort of has been like a guiding light for me for a long time. Zora Neale Hurston as well, especially Zora, like as an artist. Just her life story and the work that she did, I feel very close to it. And especially like her archival work and her interviewing of like Black Southern folks and keeping those stories alive. I think about that when I'm trying to interview people and like archive our stories as well. So I wanted them to be a part of this as sort of like a historical reference for us, Black feminist people who are always there, sort of like always there, but wanted to point at them directly as a reference. When creating this room, thinking about the home place, I directly went to an essay by Bell Hooks, Home Place as a Site of Resistance, to think about this show. In that piece, she talks about how Black women and film people have created the home place as a site of resistance. And we did it because we needed to and we had to, in creating this safe space for us. And I thought about that and I was thinking about that, but then I also think about, well, what happens when violence still meets us at our house? Even though home is supposed to be this place of comfort and safety, and we have created that for ourselves. You go home, you shut the door to the outside world, but what happens when it still meets you there, when it still comes there and it shows up, because it does. So Bell Hooks was a critical thinker, a critical thinker, and so what I wanted to do is start with that, but also think critically about that as well, and to place my thoughts and my thinking around that within this show. Yeah.
And I'm sure I did this with you back and forth, where I'm like, oh yeah, and then 11 when baby shows, it's like they came into my yard, right? And like this insistence of, you know, the tension of being Black and alive and what that actually looks like in the material consequences of the world that we live in.
Yeah.
So thinking through that, in the back gallery we have a film, you have sand, a bit of an installation going on. It's not your first time making a film, but this film is new and it's created for this actual exhibition. Can you talk to us about sort of the scenes that are captured and the desire to have, it's a single channel film, but we have another projection and it's a moving image also on a wall, and we think of it as different but the same. Can you talk to us about wanting to build out that room?
Yeah, I wanted that room to feel chill. Like I wanted it to be like you are, you know, driving in LA with your homie, you're going to the beach to just chill and have a good time. The idea for the entirety of the show is that you start with this front room. It's a violent room. The window room over here to the left. You come into the home place, which is more comfortable, and then you get to the natural world. So you're sort of like traveling through these different locations. The back room, I have been experimenting with film for the past couple of years, thinking about just what more a moving image can do that a still image can't really do. And so I wanted this room to feel sort of like an atmosphere, in the same way that I wanted this room to feel like an atmosphere. I wanted the back room to feel like outdoors in the desert at nighttime. And so the single video that plays on the one side is to create that atmosphere for us. And then the main video, there are clips from the women that I interviewed. There are clips from traveling across LA, the ocean, the desert. At the very end, I added a moving image of my grandmother, who recently passed, and I wanted that to be in there also as sort of like a tribute to her. But it's also fitting because we're thinking about how Black women experience the natural world as this place of peace. And my grandmother absolutely did that. She would always sit under the tree in her backyard. And so thinking about different generations, thinking about different locations, again, how we all sort of experience a similar thing, and just really putting it all together in this experimental video. I really love it. It's one of my favorite parts of the show.
Yeah, I was telling you that I took my kid here, who's 4, yesterday, and she was like obsessed with being in that room in particular and wanted to spend like most of her time in the sand and also just chilling in there because I think it is serene. And I think part of the experience that's happening in this exhibition are these pockets and these moments for serenity, for peace, even if the reality is far more, abject, right, than what we get to experience every day. But you've created these moments for anyone who comes in, right, to actually settle in the space, which is interesting because the display room and the exterior facing gallery, it's the least welcoming in terms of serenity. And it's also facing outward 24 hours a day, right? It's like it almost kind of exists as a singular exhibition for someone who's not coming in. I want you to talk about the quote that's on the windows and the mirror and its relationship to not just these other two spaces, but I think it really drives conceptually at something you've been getting at for a long time, which is what happens to Black women, what happens to Black femmes out in the world.
Yeah, the display room right over here, when we first started thinking about this show and I saw that room it had the windows, I knew that I wanted that room to be an extension of the street because of the windows. Like you said, like it's there 24/7, like you're going to walk by these windows, always being able to view inside of it. And so I was thinking, how can I make this gallery room just an extension of the street? And if I do so, what does that mean and what does that look like? The quote that is on the windows, on one window, it says, "Hit me in my face because I wouldn't give him my number." And on the second window, it says, "While all these men stood around and watched." I pulled those words directly from a video of a woman who had been hit, and because a man asked for her number and she would not give it to him, while there were a bunch of bystanders around who just stood there as it happened. This was one singular video, but it touches on and represents a million of experiences. I've talked with women for over a decade about street harassment, about violence that happens on the street, and I've heard plenty of stories that were just like that. And so I wanted to put the text on the window, put mirrors on the wall, so that when you look in the mirror, the text is right there behind you. And the reason to do that was to position people within the context of this experience. So if you're looking in the mirror, you're reading at the text at the same time, you can't escape it. You're looking at yourself. You're also looking at the people behind you, the people walking by, the people across the street. You're looking at the entire surrounding and environment. You are positioned in it, and you cannot escape from it. That's why I want the mirrors there. So when people walk by on the street, they read the text, but they also see themselves within the problem. Particularly men. The piece that says, "Well, all these men stood around and watched." If you're a man and you are looking at that text and you're seeing yourself in the mirror, what do you say about that? What do you do about that? And so I wanted that room to feel hard. You know, you have the wood panels, you have the black paint, you have the red paint on there, you have the concrete on the floor, you have the little objects, the headphones and the keys that women keep on them in order to keep themselves safe in some type of way. I wanted that room to feel hard and violent because I wanted it to feel real as the starting point for this experience that you're experiencing in the show.
How do you feel because you live in New York, you live in Brooklyn, and you're from Oklahoma City, and then you're here right now in LA, how do you think those three spaces really have kind of put in the energy into thinking of the display, or maybe thinking of street harassment, thinking of what it means to be on the street? They're very distinct locations with their own kind of racial histories and racial violence against Black people. Yeah, how has it kind of impacted? Because I think something about the display room that's interesting is that you're using older wheat paste to put on the plywood. So we're having a relationship to work that is some of your earliest work, and also the idea of the mirror. We talked about this a little bit around, creating a moving image of sorts. It's the most changing aspect of the whole exhibition by virtue of being a reflection of whatever is going on outside. But there's something there, because LA, most Black people drive. New York, you're moving around public transit a lot more. been to Oklahoma City. I don't know what's going on, but I'm interested in how, the work is coming through, or how those places are coming through the work.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, because I'm from Oklahoma City, born and raised, but I've lived in New York for 11 years. I've been on the East Coast for 20 years. But then this work and this show is in LA. Not only is it in LA, but it's in Leimert Park, which is a specific neighborhood, a specific place. And so all of those places are influencing the work, right? I think this room, like I said, those women are from Houston, I'm a part of the show. I am sort of like thinking about different location and different environment, different regions, different cultures, the way that people move in LA obviously is very different than New York, and sort of like putting a lot of that into the show in these different ways. It's interesting because I was thinking like, okay, the window room might feel more like an East Coast thing because we walk on the street more, and so maybe we are experiencing street harassment differently than folks experience it here. But it also still feels like LA to me. Like when I painted those wood panels, like there's wood panels across the street that also have like black paint on them. Like just driving over here every day from my hotel, I see wood panels that look exactly like the wood panels that I made in there. And so it's still like LA, I think, in its sort of appearance and aesthetic, just from it being a wall. But also I think that same violence that happens on the street absolutely happens here. I think, so I think that it isn't really inescapable, or that it's like a problem that doesn't exist here because LA is like a car culture and has like a different culture. I think it absolutely is sort of a overlapping violence that happens everywhere. Even though through years of me doing this work, I do see the differences in how things happen in different regions of the country. It's still an overlapping experience, similar to here in the home place, similar to, the same way I put like my grandmother in the video in the back right. It's the location can change, but I think the experience is very similar.
I think this is going to be my last question, and I can open up, so I hope that you thought about questions to ask Tatyana. I'm sure you did. But what do you hope for visitors to feel or to consider thinking about this exhibition and also the CAAM exhibition? Because ideally, people are going to both spaces and they're seeing the work at much different scales and concepts ultimately. But what is it that you hope the exhibition is doing or does?
It's funny, Tito asked me that yesterday, and I was like, I don't have a great answer for that, because I'm always curious about what is the work doing, what do people experience. I think that my intentions for the work are to bring this show, but also I think my work in general, is to bring people into the experience that another person has in an environment that either you may relate to or you have no idea about it, now you're just learning about it. But you are still a part of it in some way because you are a person who exists in the world with them, right? Which is a long, good sentence, so I'll say that again. I think what I mean is that, like, I want people to, if you're a Black teen person, you might relate to this work. You might relate to like how other Black films experience these different environments. You might relate to street harassment or these sentiments of being at home. And if so, I am curious about how you now experience this exhibition. But if you are not that, and you do not have the same experiences, you don't understand this, you don't experience street harassment, looking at this work now, knowing and understanding that there are a lot of people who do have these experiences, now what do you do with that? What do you do with that new understanding? What questions do you have? How are you a part of it? What responsibility do you have to the experiences that these Black people are having? So there's that part of it. I also want people to just think that this work is beautiful and to just like look at it as art. and be curious about it from just like an artistic standpoint. Yeah, and so I'm always just sort of like, I wonder at the end of the shows, like what do you feel as viewers, right, who are here? What is your experience of it? Talking with people who saw the CAAM show, people were talking to me about like the scale of it and how it made them feel, or the color of it, and being black and white, and just pointing these things out to me that maybe I thought about, them having that experience of it. That's a very personal, subjective experience for me as the artist. I'm just curious about that. So it's not like I want you to take this from it. I want you to take something from it. And then, I want to know what you took from it. You let me know, right? That's sort of like how I think about it.
Beautiful. I feel like it's recognition, implication, and then like beauty, right? It kind of feels like the trifecta here. Questions? There's so many of you. I haven't turned behind myself for a second. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, for the interviews, how do you choose the women? Is it at random, or is there some sort of criteria that you're working with for choosing them?
Yeah, so the question was, how do I choose the women that I interview? We did an open call, so I just like put stuff on my social media. I think CAAM put something on their social media about it, and so it was really just an open call. So people registered, reached out to me, and then I went about it that way. Yeah, and so because of that, it was a range of folks. There were people who were like from LA, born and raised, or people who were transplants. There were people, I went to Inglewood, I went down to Long Beach, I went to Malibu, I went to like all across. I was everywhere, and got a range of stories because
you went to their spaces.
I went to them. Yeah.
And did you allow a lot of space time with them? The conversations were maybe like 30 minutes to an hour, depending on where we were. But yeah, I asked like a couple prompt questions, and then I just sort of let the conversation flow. Just wanting to have candid, real conversations with people. And it was interesting because I found that the people who came to me were mostly Black women in their 30s, and I'm also in my 30s. And I feel like it's a particular age, and so I found it really refreshing and restoring having these conversations with people who were similar in age to me, just thinking about the life stuff that we experienced together. So yeah, between like 30s and 40s were the age groups. So spent about an hour with each person just talking. Did they seem to have anything in common to you other than the age group in terms of, say, socioeconomic or any other background?
Yes, yeah. I think that, yes, I think in some ways, like socioeconomically, I believe that we were perhaps similar in some ways. I'm trying to think of like the work that people did. I believe that it was a range of work. I talked to like teachers, someone was a student, someone was an artist, just a range of different things. I wanted to get more into like, sometimes when you meet somebody, they like introduce you to somebody else, and they introduce you to their family member, and then they introduce you to your friend, things like that. Wanted to get more into that, but that didn't really happen. I ended up just really sort of talking with the people who registered. But everybody was very different in a lot of different ways. So not just, thinking about economics, but thinking about, presentation, religion, thinking about, all these different identities. I feel like there were a range of people that I talked to.
How about back here and then here?
So I don't know for the duration of your career out loud, if you
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I've been a painter for a very long time. Painting was the very first thing that I did. And when I started painting, I was painting just a bunch of stuff about like Black people. And I was doing that because like my mother I grew up in a household where that was just, Blackness was just a big thing, so it was just always my thing. And when I was in college, I was in class with a bunch of like white students, and I was the only person like painting things that I was painting about. And they didn't understand it, they didn't like it. I was very much so outed, but I stuck with it because I just believed in that. But then when I started talking not just about Blackness, but Blackness, queerness, and womanhood all together, I found that people related to that, and they sort of gathered around me. When I started doing a project called Stop Telling Women to Smile, which is about street harassment, I did it because that was literally my experience. I was being harassed in the street in Philadelphia, where I was living at the time, and it was bad, and it was a lot. And once I put up that work, so many other people came to me and was like, this is my experience too. And so what I found was that by being very honest and open and very clear and intentional about what happens to me on a daily basis as a person, it sort of like opens up this pathway for everybody else to be like, yeah, not me too, you know? And once that happened, that's when I felt like, okay, I can go ahead and do this work and feel good about it and feel strong in it. Not knowing like what the path is going to be, not knowing if I'm gonna make money from it, or if institutions are gonna be messing with me, all of that. But the work is important, and so I can keep going and doing it, you know. So I think that was a big moment for me with that.
That was actually a perfect question. It's my question, which is, as an artist, when you create projects or other works, you know, you have your intentions with this project, I'm sure with others in the past that you've spoken about, but once it's out in the world, people take it however they do. And now, especially with social media, people feel like they can have direct access to you to voice their issues, their displeasure, you know, get dogs don't holler, especially with Stop Telling Women to Smile and things like that. So how much do you even engage with the feedback you get after you put your work out, if at all? And if so, does that affect your thought process for future projects?
Yes. I think. Oh yeah. So the question was, how much does the feedback that my work gets, positive, negative, especially things that people say online once they see the work online, because people have a lot of stuff to say online. How much that affects how I think about my work and how I approach my work. Is that right? I'm gonna be honest, I think I'm a really good artist, and I think that I like have a very strong point of view, and I think that I have good taste. And so I really think that I really feel very strongly about the work that I make, and I think that is good. And so I take criticism well, because I'm open to criticism. But when that criticism is, I find that a lot of times in the work that I make, the criticism is not about the art. It's not about it being good work or not. And so in that way, it doesn't affect how I move forward with it. A lot of the times, it is what you just said, hit dogs on a holler. It's going to be someone who is upset that you are pushing back on something that they do, or something that is normalized. When I make work that says, stop telling women to smile, people are like, well, what is wrong with telling women to smile? And that's the criticism. It's not of the artwork itself. It's of this behavior that we do, that is normal, that people just, why is that an issue? And that's what people are upset about. And that way, it doesn't affect how I move forward with the work at all. I just keep going. I will say that there was one piece that I made that did make me stop and pause and think about my work and think about how I approached my work because of the criticism that it got. And it was a piece that I put up in Brooklyn a few years ago, portrait of a man, a Black man, and the text said, let Black men be soft. And immediately after I put that up, not only did it get criticism, but it was vandalized. Somebody like took some like paint, put it over the words. Black men were coming up to me in the street like, no, this is not it. And so that piece I did a lot of thinking about that piece, and the reaction to it really did make me think and reconsider, and I'm still thinking about that piece. But that's really like the only time that a reaction has made me sort of like stop for a moment and consider my approach to the art piece itself. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to apologize for my phone ringing and me not having it on silent. And then as well, so when did you know, or at what age did you feel the creativity and artistry side of you begin to manifest into who you are now as a person? And did you have guidance and a foundation to propel you forward?
Yeah, so the question is, at what age that I really start to come into like art, my artist, and did I have support to like propel me forward? My mom is an artist, and so when I started drawing and making art, I was in high school. Late in high school, I was like a junior in high school. I just picked up a pencil one day and just started drawing. I was like, oh, I'm good at this. And that was just sort of it. And then I decided to go to art school. Again, I'm from Oklahoma City. I went to art school in Philadelphia. And most of my family was like, Philadelphia's too far, that's just too expensive, you're not gonna do a job making art. But my mother, being an artist and being very supportive, she was all in. And so that really was the start of it for me. And then when I got to Philly, everything has changed for me. I love Philadelphia, I love the East Coast. I was just like, this is it for me. And I just sort of went in from there. So I did have a parent who was very supportive of me. And I think it was high school when I decided that I really wanted to pursue art. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. I think I got the map. Here. We're fine.
Hi. My question, you asked for our reactions to the work. So at CAAM, there was like, my reaction, one of my takeaways is that there seems to be like a narrative. So it's like the fallen seed and then landing softly. Is there part 3 or what do you see next? Because it seems like there's like a narrative. And then what's coming to mind too from the experience at CAAM, like the scale, I feel like I was like in the forest, the trees, but not in an intimidating way, like feeling safe and protected. And then here it's like a very different vibe, but there's also still that bigness. But I want to know if there's like a story and you see the whole picture, or does the work kind of evolve and come to you?
Yeah, so the show at CAAM is definitely related to this show. And so it is a story in that way. That when you walk into CAAM, I'm glad you felt like that, because I wanted it to feel like you are walking amongst these trees, you are walking amongst these people, that it is this big installation, this big space that you're a part of. And I wanted this show to feel similar. You know, I wanted you to walk into here with the big work on the walls, the skylight, the plant, the couch, I created this tree over here. I wanted you to feel like you are a part of this space as well. So that is like the through line. But the show at CAAM and this show is sort of like the final of the collaboration of the 2 shows. This show is up until August. The show at CAAM is up until 2025 next year. And so I hope that people go to both spaces. Like, I hope that you experience this, you go to CAAM, experience that, experience the 2 together, and I love that you said that. I love to like hear your experience of it, because the 2 shows aren't related. Yeah. But this is it. This is it for this.
Okay.
Yeah. I was in Houston doing a show at Project homes. Project Row. Is it row homes or row houses? Row houses. Okay. I always say row homes because I lived in Philly for a long time. It's row homes. And so I was looking for some stuff to be a part of the installation there. And so I went to a thrift store, and it was 2 photo albums. And I thought it was fascinating that it was just like this family's photo albums here at this store. And there were some beautiful photographs in there. And I thought it felt special to me. And so I bought it. I used some of the images in the show in Houston. And because they were so beautiful and I just feel so special having them, I used them throughout. But that was the context. I was doing a show, I was looking for some stuff to be a part of the installation, and I just came across these photo albums. I had the photos in there. Yeah.
So I just wanted to say I've been a fan of your work for a long time, particularly from that site. I won't say it out loud, but I think you know what I'm referring to. And I just wanted to say, when I walked in, I was blown away by the different juxtaposition of color that you're using in here. And I was just curious, as an artist, how do you decide, I'm going to do this in black and white? And I really appreciate you explained this, but I'm very curious, like, how do you make the decision of, this is something I'm going to do in pencil, or this is something I'm going to paint? How do you come to that decision? Thanks.
Yeah, drawing is like, I love to draw. Like, I love graphic drawings. And so sometimes I see an image, or all of the work that I do when it comes to like a painting or a drawing is based on photographs that I take myself. So all of the drawings and portraits that I do of people, I take the photo with them and I do it from that. And so sometimes when I take these images of people, I sort of like look at it and decide what I feel like is going to work better as like a graphic drawing or work better as a painting. And then with this show, when it comes to the colors, like say this wall, for example, this vintage photo, just the colors of it, I thought would match beautifully with the colors of these 2 paintings. And so I think that they work well together. And so we layered that wall based on that color palette. The wall behind me, I just really wanted a sunset painting on the wall. I was like, I just want a wall to be a sunset painting, so that when you come in, you have this living room set up, you see the sunset behind you, and gives you that sort of like LA vibe, the indoor plants, but like say it's a big window where you see the sunset outside. And then again, layering. So I wanted to put a painting on top of that wall in the same way that these other walls have it. And then if you see the video in the back, there's also more layering that's happened, layering image on top of image on top of image. And when I was making the video, when I was choosing which clips would go on top of the other, I was looking at the color. Which color image, the color palette in each video clip works best with the image that is going on top of. So just thinking about layering, thinking about texture, and then thinking about which colors work best within that layering.
Is there one more question over here? Are you with us? No, it's fine. She's
Hi, I just want to say thank you for being here. Your work is beautiful, so thank you for sharing. And I know Brother Warehouse as well. I used to work for them, by the way. So, but I just want to talk about a little bit about being a Black artist, an African American artist, and I'm an artist as well, a brown artist. We are inherently indigenous, and I know that we are working and live in the Americas, which is framed in a very American frame of reference. So I just want to know, how do you position your work within that epistemology, and how do you navigate through that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I make work that I feel like is very particular to
The people,
Okay. I make work that is very specific and particular to the things that I care about and the people that I care about. Now, making that work within the context of this world and this society is its own thing, but I just try to make the work I try to be very intentional and specific about the work that I am making.
not let the context within which it is made influence the work itself. So I care about myself and I care about my people. Someone asked me yesterday, safety seems to be a through line in a lot of my work, and why do I make work about safety? And I make work about safety because I relate safety to freedom, and I think that you can only be free if you feel safe. And I think that we are all trying to be free in some way. I think particularly Black people, queer people, I think that we just want to be free. And without having your life or your livelihood put in jeopardy as you are living your free self. And so that is why I make the work that I make, and I'm just trying to be intentional about that. And I do that because I love myself and I love the communities that I'm a part of. And so I make work within that framework, right? Now how that work is positioned within these larger contexts, I think about that as a challenge, as a struggle. But if I'm just positioning myself within that one framework and doing my job, then I feel okay and I feel good about that. And what's happening around me, I just kind of, let it happen around me. I hope that answers your question in some way. I think, yeah. Okay.
You have time for one more question? Who wants to do it?
How did the name of the exhibition come about?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so the show at CAAM is called Speaking to Falling Seeds. And this show is now called Finding Soft Ground. Both of these titles are related to, in reference from a quote from Zora Neale Hurston in her book, Their Eyes Were Watching God. In that book, Janie, the main character, is watching these seeds fall to the ground, and she hears them say to one another, I hope you fall on soft ground. The seeds are talking to each other saying, I hope you fall on soft ground. And I think that's just such a beautiful, beautiful sentiment in a beautiful book. And when I was interviewing these women in LA last year, I thought about it as being the seeds talking to each other, have conversation to each other. And so I titled the show Speaking to Falling Seeds. And with that sentiment behind it, knowing that I hope they fall on soft ground. I hope you find a soft space to be, to land, and to live. And so we're creating this show because we are creating these different locations and environments. And in each different location and environment, you are seeking safety, right? So it's like finding the soft ground. Where is the soft ground? Is it outside? Is it in the home? Is it in the natural world? Where is it? What is it? So the title of the show is related to the CAAM title, and both titles are related to Their Eyes Were Watching God. So thank you for that. I think that was a good question. Yeah.
Thank you, Tatyana.
Thank you.